Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kids Health Revolution Kitchen, where we are cooking up a revolution in our kids' health, one simple recipe, gut healing, healthy recipe at a time. So hello to everybody over in our private Facebook, my goodness, my tongue's getting tied already, private Facebook page, and hello to everybody over on just the regular Kids Health Revolution page. If you are already not already a member over in our private group, highly recommend that you become part of our wonderful and growing community over there. We have a great group of parents that are so supportive of each other, lots of great questions and answers going on over there. And each of these live weekly videos that I do, I post a file into the private group, and you can download the copies there and reference them and search them and come up with all kinds of different ideas and recipes. I think we've done 19 or 20 so far, and we're still trucking along. So there's lots of great ideas on things that you can make easily, that we can pack into those lunch kits so that we know our kids are getting that great nutrient-dense food that's supporting their gut health and supporting what we're trying to do with their health, right? Whether that be just simply supporting their health with wonderful food and good nutrition, or whether our kids have some sort of chronic health condition that means that they're on some sort of special dietary protocol for gut healing to help try and reverse some kind of chronic health condition, right? To help bring down those inflammatory fires. So all of the foods that we prepare in these videos are foods that are gut healing, gut healthy, full of good nutrients. Oftentimes we've got anti-inflammatory foods, lots of really great stuff that also passes the taste tests, right? It has to pass the taste test for our kiddos, because what's the point in making all of this great nutritious food for our kids if they're not gonna eat it? So we wanna make sure it's stuff that they like, they're gonna eat, that you can send to school in their lunch kits, and fits the healthy bill. So that's what we do each week here in the live school snack series. Make sure you join the community so you can get the downloadable copy of the recipe. Now, this week, last week, we did a couple of really handy little convenience foods, and I'm gonna do that every now and then. During that video, I mentioned that I was gonna do a dip recipe today. Well, I changed my mind because I got some really nice green plantains at the moment, and these aren't always easy to get here in Calgary. So I figured I've got them today. I'm gonna make my plantain cracker recipe for you. And then next week, we'll do the cauliflower carrot hummus dip, which will go really nicely with these really nice little crackers. Now I just wanna point out to you, these little crackers, how nice and crisp they are, right? You see that? Nice crisp crunch they have to them. Oftentimes crackers that don't have the gluten in them or the dairy tend to not be as crisp as they could be. Now these plantain crackers really fit that crispy bill, and you're going to be really pleased with them. So simple to make. You need two really basic ingredients and then your flavors. So we're going to use olive oil in my recipe. You can also use you could use ghee, you could use coconut oil, you could certainly use avocado oil. Just stay away from some of the inflammatory oils, the seed oils and things. You don't want to use those. And then we're going to use two pretty good size green plantains, and it's really important that they be green in order to get them to crisp up the way you want them to. And as well, the green plantains are really high in what's called a resistant starch. So this is a prebiotic fiber that is not digested high up in the intestines. It goes further down into the large intestine, and this is the food that our gut bugs like to live on. The prebiotic fibers, they munch away on this, and then they're happy and healthy and they want to stick around. So all those probiotic foods you're eating, you feed them some prebiotic foods, and then they're more likely to hang around and do the jobs we want them to be doing. So plantains are a really great source, and to get the most out of your prebiotic fibers, you want to cook these and then cool it in order to eat it. And that's why a cracker like this is perfect, because you cook it and then you eat it when it's cooled. So you get the great prebiotic fiber from it. Now, one little caveat to the prebiotic fibers is it really depends on where you are in your gut healing journey. So if you are in the midst of doing a GAPS diet, GAPS intro diet, specific carbohydrate diet, any of those protocols where you're really pulling back on a lot of those fibers because you're trying to starve out pathogenic opportunistic bacteria, and you're trying to give the intestinal tract kind of a little rest and a break from a lot of fiber, then this isn't going to be the best recipe for you just then. So plantains are not GAPS approved, but as you're transitioning off of the GAPS diet, or you've done the intro diet and you're on the full GAPS diet and you're ready for a little bit more starch and fiber, then this would be a great place to start. So try it, right? That's the only way to know if it works for your kids, is to try it out. If their symptoms flare up or they get constipation or diarrhea from it, then you know it's not quite time to start with this much starch and fiber. So let's go ahead and start making this recipe. I know if you have any questions while we're going along, please make sure to post those below, and I'm happy to, if I can see them, and I've got you pretty close for here and not too bad over there. So if I can see them, I'll answer you right on the fly here, and if not, of course, I will scroll through and answer you later on. Now, here's the one challenge to the green plantains, is they're not easy to peel like a banana would be. So what I do is I cut the tips off, and then I slit it down the center, and then sometimes what I can do is just manage to get my finger in there to peel it back from the banana. Now, sometimes this works better than others. You can see I'm getting a little bit of the banana off in there, so that's okay. We'll get it out with a knife afterwards. Okay, and you just work at peeling that back, and eventually you get there. This is probably the most difficult part of this entire recipe. So I'm just going to, let's see if I can move my food processor more into this picture as well. So I'm just going to slice this into my food processor. You could also use a high-powered blender to do this recipe. And I will just try and just, you know, because I don't like to waste, get that little bit out without chopping my finger off. Okay, so there's one. Now, I would suggest actually when I do this recipe, I usually double the recipe, which makes a large cookie sheet full of crackers. But just for today's purposes, to make it quick and simple, this is the recipe just for 2 plantains. So if you wanted to double or even triple, quadruple this recipe, make 2 cookie sheets full, then you could certainly do that. And freeze them and have them on hand for when you want them. They're great for parties. If you want crackers and dip at your party, these are a great option. See, now the other thing that we can do here, rather than, if it's not coming away by pulling with your finger, you can just peel it like you would a potato or a turnip or anything like that. And sometimes these plantains have a little bit of brown spots on them. That's okay. I always tend to wash my plantains too before I peel them and before I use them, just to get rid of any bacteria that's on them. We don't want to push that bacteria through into the plantain meat and then we're eating it. If we're not cooking these things at a really high temperature, that can be an issue. So a note about the olive oil. I use olive oil in this recipe, even though I often don't recommend cooking, or often, as my son likes to correct me, I often don't like cooking with olive oil because I talk about not heating it. It's better raw, which is true, but if you're not heating it to a super high temperature, and we're only using our oven at 300 degrees today, that you're gonna be okay with keeping your olive oil nice and intact. Okay, so that goes in, and then I put in a full teaspoon of salt into this recipe. Nice, good quality sea salt or Himalayan rock salt. And we're gonna go in with the oil. So good quality olive oil, again, avocado oil would work. You could use ghee. I've not used ghee with this yet, which I really want to try because it would probably be a really nice, rich, buttery tasting cookie if you did it that way. Cracker if you did it that way, but I don't have any ghee at the moment, so we're using olive oil again. that goes in, and then we add our flavors. So really here, the flavor world is your oyster. Rosemary is very tasty in these, along with a little bit of lemon zest. Olives and rosemary popped into this. Really, really nice. Just a couple of olives. But today we're just keeping it pretty simple. So I'm going in with a teaspoon or two, I usually use 2 of dehydrated onion flakes. Now, these are really nice for adding kind of a depth of flavor, kind of an umami flavor, even though onions aren't technically considered umami. I find the dehydrated onions are a good way of getting a bit of that umami taste in. And about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit less, of garlic powder is what we have there. And then I just throw in a few pinches of some nice herbs. So I've got basil here. And do this to taste. So I put in a couple of really good healthy pinches. You can do a little bit less if you think your kiddo's not going to like much of an herby taste. If you want more of a plain tasting cracker, that would be fine as well. That was oregano, and then this one is thyme. And I just find that's a really nice combination. You could put sun-dried tomatoes in these crackers, all kinds of stuff that you can do for flavor. But this is just a base recipe, and then I want you to play with it and make it your own, and then post your pictures in the private community. I love it when you do that. And tell me what you've come up with. So let's just blend this up. Just give it a scrape down just to make sure I'm getting all of that blended in. So this recipe is nut-free, so it is also AIP, so autoimmune protocol, as well as low histamine. So it kind of checks off all those dietary protocol boxes. Good. I'm going to blend it just for another moment. So you want to make sure that all the chunks of the plantain that really, you'll notice it's quite dry when they're green. So you want to make sure it's really well incorporated with the oil. Okay, and so you sort of form this loose dough-like substance. I'm going to show you guys here. So there you go. That's what it looks like when it's all blended up. And then we're just going to spread it out on a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. And I usually drizzle a little bit of oil on my parchment paper just for extra protection to make sure it's not going to stick. And I have one here. Might look a little bit funky. That's because I'm reusing it. I already made some crackers today, and I am reusing the same piece of parchment paper. No reason to waste, right, when we don't have to. So now this batch, as I mentioned, is not going to spread out over this entire cookie sheet. If you want to cover a whole big cookie sheet like this, you would want to double this recipe. But this works okay. You just squish it out. This is probably the most time-consuming part of this recipe, and it really doesn't even take that long. It takes a little bit of patience, but I like to think that these are sort of moments to practice a little bit of mindfulness, right? We can be in the moment with what we're doing. We can find these activities to be quite relaxing. So instead of having to go find the time to sit down and meditate for my stress, I can use these sorts of moments to be really mindful of what I'm doing and notice how the batter feels and notice the smell and just the process of what I'm doing. And I do find it to be quite relaxing when I can really tune into it that way rather than feeling rushed between things, right? And that's not always easy when we've got kids in the kitchen with us too, but can find a few quiet minutes to do these things and approach it from that point of view, I think you can find it can be quite relaxing instead of having to be a terrible chore that you just have to get through, right? So you want to make sure it's fairly thin, and what I do is just press it out, you know, sort of from the middle out to the edges. And you're looking for probably about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a bit less than that, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. If it's too thick, it's not going to set up and get crispy. And so what I do, you can probably see here that my edges on the one side are all kind of wonky and uneven. I've got one side that isn't quite finished, so I just rip a bit off of one side and then go and finish it off. I mean, it wouldn't matter if your kids don't care if they're perfect little squares. But if you want to get those really nice looking squares, then you can just do that with your batter. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Put a little bit on this side so we can square it off. And you want to make sure that it's not so thin that you've got holes, because then it's going to burn in the middle, and that's not going to taste very good. And then I kind of just put my finger along the edge, this edge that I'm not getting right to the other side of the pan, and I find that gives me a little bit of a ledge there. Okay, the other thing you can do if you want to be really particular about it is use your knife and just make sure you've got a nice neat looking edge there. I usually don't bother with this step. My kiddo's not that particular about it. If it's got a little bit of a rough edge, he's okay. Now, you're good to go. There's your crackers. So that's gonna go, actually one last step usually before I put them in the oven is I like to score them first. So you can score them with a pizza. I find these handy, so a little pizza wheel is how I like to do it first. And you can make rectangular shapes or small square shapes, whatever sort of size you want. So I will score them first before I put them in the oven at all. And then I will usually go back over my score lines once or twice as they're cooking. So there you go. They're nice and scored now. You can see those. And I'll pop those in the oven at 300 degrees. And I just leave them there for the first about 40 minutes, and then I'll take them out and use my paring knife just to go over my score lines again, just to really start separating them up, and that way the air can kind of get in between. And then I'll put them back in for about 5 minutes and then pull them out, and then usually at that point I can separate them. So I'll separate the crackers out onto the tray, and then they crisp up a little bit better. What you will find is these guys on the outer edges are going to get crispy faster. So usually what I'll do is cook them until these guys are crispy, take those off, and then the middle ones will go back into the oven for another 5 or 10 minutes. So 40 minutes you've got free. You can go help the kids with the homework, you can go play a game, you could go watch a little Netflix, whatever you want to do. And then at that 40-minute mark, then you're going to be keeping a little bit of a closer eye on them. So set your timer for 5-minute intervals. Just keep checking in on them because you don't want them to get too brown, or otherwise they'll taste a little bit burnt. So your final result, I've cut these into rectangles, and I showed you a little bit earlier, is, that's really weird. I hope we haven't lost our connection there, but anyway, it's nice and crunchy. I don't know if you can hear me crunching. Really crunchy cracker. So most kiddos that have been on some sort of gluten-free or gut healing protocol will be very receptive to this type of cracker. If they're used to eating packaged crackers and you immediately transition them into this, you might find there's a bit of resistance. Okay, they might not love them right away because the texture is slightly different. It's crunchy, it's tasty, but it's not the same as a processed food. So sometimes I find, they need to get used to this lifestyle for a little while first before we start replacing some of these types of treats. So I would send these to school, 3 or 4 of the crackers, and I would send it with some of the dip that we're going to make next week, or just on their own. These are a great little snack to put in for that recess snack, right? Because the recess snack is the one they want to be able to grab and run, right? They don't want a container, they don't want to have to sit there with a spoon. They want something they can grab and hit the playground. So this is great. A couple of these and they can take them on the run. Lots of great prebiotic fiber, as I mentioned, healthy fat from the olive oil, and that's it. There's nothing else in these crackers that we need to worry about. Super simple, about 5 minutes of hands-on time, and the rest of it is just sitting in the oven while you do something else. So I hope you'll try this recipe, and again, make sure you join the Kids Health Revolution community. There's a private Facebook page, you can just search that. And as well, if you join the Kids Health Revolution community on the website, it's www.kidshealthrevolution.com. Join the community there. I just need your email address and your name, quick and simple. And then each week you'll get the recipes right into your inbox, so you don't have to go looking for them anywhere else. And there's some great resources over there as well. Things like 20 fabulous freezer recipes. There's a leaky gut quiz. There's recorded information about recovering your child's health. In case you don't have time to sit and read everything, you can take the MP3 recordings on the go with you. What else have I got in there? Oh, green light, red light, food lists, cheat sheets, all kinds of good stuff that you get for free. So email address and your name, and that's all we need. And then you get to be part of this wonderful group of parents over here in the private Facebook group. So you guys, keep your questions coming, keep your comments and all the great support coming. I'm loving what's happening here in the community. I am so happy to see that that's what's happening, because when we're on this journey with our kids and we're making these changes to the diet, it can be challenging sometimes. So we need to know that we have a group, a community of people that can gather around us. And if not physically, if we don't have them in our physical world, then virtually we'll have to do. So let's keep up that great virtual support. And I will see you guys again next week with another great recipe for the school snack series. Take good care, everyone. Bye.